once you hit it, you can't take it back.
This week on Kentucky Afield, hunting is rarely easy, and the challenge is many people's favorite part. Joe is going to show us a fun project you can take on that's sure to add to the difficulty and reward of your hunt.
It's a good wintertime project, by the way.
Absolutely.
It's all next on Kentucky Afield.
Such a pretty fish.
Beautiful.
This pond is plumb loaded with frogs.
They're everywhere in here. Yeah, this is a good fish right here. Really good fish.
Come here, girl.
Yeah, boy. That's a big rabbit.
Nice job. Yes! Yes! My first musket. Mercy Leo!
Yeah, look at it. It's a keeper.
Here it goes! Boom!
Wow, that happened fast.
Hello, and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm your host, Chad Miles. Join us as we journey the Commonwealth in search of outdoor adventure. Are you an experienced deer hunter looking for a new challenge? Well, you may want to give this a try next season. But to do so, you better get started now. So Joe, what we're doing here today is you're about ready to show me a tree that you've fallen in love with to turn into a handmade bow.
That's right. This is an absolute beauty of an Osage orange, or hedge apple, as most people call it.
Okay, and so it's exactly what this is, right?
Correct.
And this is a bow that you spent many hours getting this exact right shape, and it takes a lot of know-how to get this at the right moisture and to bend it exactly right and to shape this the way you've got it done here. But you don't do this just for fun. You do this because this is your hunting bow, right?
Right, yeah.
And you've taken several deer with this bow and some turkey as well, right?
I have.
There's something about the simplicity of this piece.
When you go in the woods with the compound, you're packing a gadget bag, a rangefinder, arrows, release. You have so much stuff that by the time you get up in your tree, you're feeling labor.
Tell me a couple reasons why you like this particular tree.
Well, Osage typically looks like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The next tree over is really knotty, and you can actually look at the bark and see that it swirls around the tree. It's not growing straight. This one, I mean, I'm willing to bet when I cut this tree and split it, it's going to split pretty much straight. This is a very good stave in that it's split very straight. The grain is good.
So this is one that you're currently starting to work on, right? So what I'd like to do is to follow you through this all the way to shooting it someday.
Okay.
Now, we're not going to be able to do it with this tree, and the reason being is when you cut that, you're going to then store that wood for about a year before you get started, right?
Yes.
And you're already here, same kind of wood, same type of wood. This is probably going to be your 2019, 2020 bows potentially.
I've got a few staves put away to work on, but this is a tree that's just absolutely perfect.
From start to finish, you're telling me it's about a 45-hour project?
That's what I had in my first one.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a couple hours to cut the tree and prepare the staves, seal them, get all that ready, and then you're looking at another 40 hours with a draw knife and a rasp, basically, working out the bow. When I get down to really close to the final tiller, I'll use a paint scraper.
We'll let this tree live another day, and we'll get started on what we got.
Sounds good.
All right, that sounds great. So Joe, you picked an Osage tree, but now you're going to show us how to cut a stave, and this is actually a locust, correct?
Correct, this is black locust.
So the process of getting the stave out to build a bow is the same no matter what type of wood you're using for the most part?
Essentially, you've got two types of wood. You've got Osage and white woods, and locust is one that can be treated either as a white wood or like Osage in that you can chase a ring.
Okay.
You see how the rings are well defined here?
Yes.
Generally, you want the stave to be equal to your height.
Okay.
And most people, if they span their arms, that's
Pretty
gonna
close.
be pretty close to what their height is. So when I'm cutting a tree, I'll go, okay,
There you go.
there's where I want to cut it, right
Yeah.
there.
And
That's my measuring stick.
this is obviously split, so you're going to utilize that split.
It's got a check in it where moisture is escaping or it had, whatever fault it may have had. So I'm going to take advantage of that. There's a couple of checks actually. The easiest bow to make is here where you've got wider rings. And that just makes it easier to chase. If you make a mistake, you haven't nicked completely through that ring. This wood is a little tighter grain, but easily you've got a bow in this. You've got potentially, you've got a bow here and another bow here, and maybe, I don't know what kind of a deformity is there, so you might be able to cut it off and make a kid's bow. But when I split out these staves, that's how I'm going to kind of pick where I put the splits after I do the initial split.
Okay. There we go. This thing's almost getting manageable.
I'm going to cut that in half, make sure I've got enough room for a bow there. Even though I drew that out as this would be for sure one bow, I'm taking a gamble that I'm going to get 2, possibly 3 out of this. And once you hit it, you can't take it back.
All right, we got these. Let's get them up there and show us the next stage.
Okay, sounds good.
So now you're just going to put this in to hold it so you can remove some of the wood off of it.
Yes. Once you get down to the actual wood.
Whoops. And you can kind of tell when the wood's there, it's going to be this color.
Yes, it's going to have a little different,
a little bit darker,
a little different color.
Because this wood here is a little soft, right?
Yeah, this is still the inner bark. But something that's very important is that when you get this wood ready to dry, there's no question, when did I get that? When did I put that up?
So once you get to this stage right here, it really is seal it with polyurethane, ends and back, and then put it up, and
A couple years if you can.
couple years even. So you always keep a couple in the works. This one's been stored and dried and is ready to go, right?
This one's 3 years. Yes.
So the next process is
chasing a ring on Osage.
okay.
So I've secured that. You can see I'm down to a ring there, and I've got 2 rings on top of it. So my goal is to take off those rings one at a time. And once I get this to a complete ring, and I'm happy with the way that's looking, I'll then draw the bow profile on the side of the stave,
Okay. We're going to go through the next stage of this, which is
laying out the bow.
we're going to lay out the bow. And first and foremost is the center.
You got to find the center. The center is where your finger is going to pivot, just shy of 29. So this is going to be my center. And I'm going to mark it on the side, as well as the back of the bow.
Okay.
That's where I'm going to grip the bow, the fulcrum of the bow.
That's essentially where the arrow's going to reside, right there above.
Well, the arrow's going to be above that,
A little above
an
that.
inch and a half, maybe.
Okay.
That's the grip. That's the fulcrum of the bow.
Okay.
So now, if you've got a handle profile that you like, you can lay that up there, get the back even, and just kind of do your side profile like that.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, an arrow shelf, I like to do it about an inch and a half. So, and I like it to have a little bit of an arch to it so that it has a minimal amount of contact with the arrow. I know my limb thickness is going to be you know, no more than a 1/2 inch. So I will basically rough it out like that.
Gotcha, okay.
And the same thing here. You're gonna need to have a fade area where the bow transitions from handles to the limbs. And the way I've drawn this, essentially this is the fades. I usually measure this, but I used another bow of my preferred pattern to get to that point. And it depends on whether you're making a pyramid bow. A pyramid meaning it starts the widest at the fades and goes directly to the apex where the tips are. If you've got a reasonably straight stave, you can lay this on the center, and you find your center, and I'll mark, you know, a point 3/8 of an inch each side of that, and that's going to give me a little wider than a 1/2 inch tip that will let me narrow that down later on.
Okay.
One thing that you also want to take in consideration, this has a little bit of a snake meander to it. A knot, like you see right here, you're better off to have it where it is now than right on the edge of the bow.
Gotcha, you don't want, okay.
You don't want that weakness, you know, because if you cut through that knot on the edge, you've created a weak spot.
Gotcha.
And I like to do a pyramid bow. Some people will come up halfway, keep this the same width, halfway, and they start their taper at the halfway point. And this makes a really interesting bow in and of itself. This is going to be a safe limb design for this bow given this knot.
Gotcha, okay.
If I had done a pyramid bow to the tip, this knot's going to be a problem.
It's going to be right on the edge.
It's going to be right on the edge, and I don't want that. And I've got another knot that you can't see from this side. There is another knot here that when I go to chasing that ring is going to be complicating as well. So I want to keep this width what it is. Another thing, you mark both sides of the bow. Here's my fade. So I know when I go to whittling on that.
Stay way out.
Stay way outside the line. Leave the lines on the wood, and everything is good.
You'll take a saw and saw that out?
I'll get on a bandsaw and I'll whack off this. You can do it with a hand saw as well. You got to be real careful here around the fades, but I get rid of most of that.
Gotcha.
With a saw. It saves me a lot of time.
Okay.
It takes, you know, it goes from being a 40-hour bow to being a 15, 20-hour bow.
Yeah.
If you're not removing this with a draw knife or a rasp. That's a lot of wood.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how this bow takes shape. Last time we split a couple of staves from a downed tree.
And once you hit it, you can't take it back.
Then we also drew an outline on a dried stave in preparation for cutting and shaping. Now, this is the very next step after what you showed us before. You went and you've cut this out. Now what?
Well, I have gone in and put antler tips on this. I use fast flight strings, and that helps to increase the longevity of the tips.
What would you do to it after this point right here?
Now I am trying to get the limbs even, and I use the stave press. So I'll flex the limb and look at how things are moving. And it's moving pretty evenly. It's still a little stiff up here by the fades, and I can feel that. I take my hand and run down the wood, and you can feel the thicknesses. And you can see, you feel a little bit of a thin spot right here. That could develop into a hinge, and when I look at it, when I'm bending it, it bends more there than it does anywhere else. So I'm looking, and actually I can see a little bit of where I've gone through that growth ring. You see that dark spot? So I want to say no to here. Don't get that, but everywhere else,
You're gonna remove a little bit?
I'm gonna remove a little bit. I'll go in there with this paint scraper.
That's a paint scraper?
That's a paint scraper. I'm to the point where the draw knife might be just a little bit too aggressive.
So it's the stage in between a draw knife and sandpaper. That's a paint scraper.
Paint scraper. So now I'll feel it for any scratches that I might have put in a corner. You don't want it to have sharp corners. You want to round those off, because when you go to bending it, that's where it'll break.
It'll splinter there, yeah.
So you want to make sure you don't have any of that, and I'm pretty happy with that, so I'll flip it around. That limb is bending. Those may be more even now.
Now that you got your limbs, they're bending pretty similar.
Right.
And this is how you test this. Is there any other way to test this?
Putting the string on it.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that here in just a second.
I'll tell you, looking from here, they look pretty even. It looks pretty good.
The another thing that I look for when you do that is where your string is lining up. And I don't quite have it braced to be able to tell for sure, but you want the string to be running. If it lays anywhere on the handle, you're good.
All right, fantastic. So now we've got this stage. Where would you go from here?
So I'll take off even amounts of wood off both limbs until I get to the desired draw weight.
So Joel, the next time we see you, you're going to finish these limbs out to the appropriate weight to make sure they bend the right. And you're going to take a rasp and you're going to put this handle in, right?
I'll have it roughed in where I can shoot at least.
Joe, we're back here for our third trip, and we're going to get to shoot this thing today, right?
That's right.
So you've done quite a bit since we were here last. Obviously, it's pretty obvious to see that you've put a shelf on it, and you've also worked on the handle.
I have.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I like to make it fit my hand and get as narrow as I can. But you have to make sure that you don't weaken this enough that this is the weakest point. You want the limbs to bend, and you really don't want that to bend, because if it bends here, it'll break in half on you.
And so you kind of put your hand there until it feels right. And you've done this with a rasp and sandpaper, really, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't happen real fast, and you go slow, take a little bits at a time. I'm sure you probably grabbed this thing a good 50 to 100 times in the process, did you not?
At least.
And then your shelf here is got a curve to it.
It's got a little bit of a curve to it, and you know, I want minimal contact with the air. Of course, when you shoot it, it flexes and it gets off there anyway, but I think a little bit of a radius to a shelf is an asset, or at least I like to do it.
So tell me what else you've done to it since we've left.
Well, I heat treated it. You can see that the belly of the limbs is a little darker. Many woods will benefit from heat treating. I took a heat gun and basically held it about 4 inches over that and moved it down the length of the limb, and it strengthens the cells. Woods that are weaker in compression tend to take more set, and if you heat treat them, they take less set. I'm constantly making sure there's no splinters or no kind of cross grain violation that could be an issue.
So what's the next step now?
Well, the next step is to see what the tiller looks like.
Okay.
And we'll exercise the limbs a little bit, and then we'll go fling an arrow.
Okay. Now this here is commonly referred to as your brace height.
Right.
How much brace height do you want out of a longbow like this?
Most people will use a fistimule, which is basically putting your thumb on the belly of the riser, and where your thumb tip is about right.
Okay.
Another thing I look at is I want that string to be going down the center of the bow as best possible when you lay it down, and when you look at that from end to end, that's pretty good. I like the way that's
right down pretty good, yeah. So what's our next step after this here?
All right, let's shoot a couple arrows and see how it feels.
Wow, that shot pretty.
It snapped it out there, didn't it?
Snapped it out there pretty good.
And I didn't draw it to my full draw length because, again, I don't want to do that until I've got it to the final. But it whipped it.
Hey, that thing shoots pretty well.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
I'm pleased.
All right, so now we're going to put on a new string that you hand tied and see how it shoots.
I'm probably going to shoot it a few times because I'm going to have to twist it again after I've shot it.
This whole process, we've tried to simplify it as much as we possibly can, but to get all these little tips, it takes two things. It takes some experience, and also, if you wanted to learn a little more about the process before trying to attempt your own bow, is there anything that you'd recommend as far as a good read?
A good read, you know, the Bowyer's Bible, there's volumes 1 through 4. Just a tremendous amount of information there.
I'm sure you could read this entire book here and still not know some of the things they're talking about or understand why until you get your hands on it and start building one. You're going to make some mistakes.
You're
right?
going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from your mistakes, more importantly. And we talked about resources, you know, the internet, YouTube.
Another bowyer?
There's some great bowyers that have videos online, just some great information on, you know, from taking a tree down to splitting staves, to storing staves, to making strings, you know, everything. All right, so.
First shot with a new string.
First shot with a new string. Notice what those silencers look like. That's about to change.
They're going to come up to an abrupt stop here in a second.
And I'm going to try to hit that turkey right where his wattles would be. We'll see whether that happens or not. So a little left. Little left, so I may not have my knock point right.
Well, Joe, you make a fine bow and arrow. Good luck with this year. I'm going to keep up with you and let me know how this turns out. I'm sure this is going to be the demise of a couple of deer this year.
I will. If luck is with me, I'll be able to get a couple, maybe 4.
Well, that's what the refrigerator hold. That's what I'd take.
That's about what we eat a year.
Well, it's a great piece, and I've enjoyed this whole process of watching you literally take a piece of wood from your property and turn it into this piece of hunting equipment. Thanks again for walking me through it.
You're welcome. It's a good wintertime project, by the way.
Absolutely. Lieutenant McQuarrie, how you doing?
Good, sir. Good to see you again.
Today we're going to talk about something a little different. Hunting from a boat. This can be a lot of fun, especially for small game hunting.
In counties that have a big river system, we see that a lot. People tend to love to hunt from a boat after small game, squirrels in particular.
I know that when I was a kid, my dad would take me out fishing, and when squirrel season was in, we would be fishing down a waterway and hunting at the same time, and it doubled your chances. It really is a good way to keep a kid active.
It sure is. You can stay active all day long. The things we have to avoid is, and you need to know, is you can hunt big game from a boat. So your deer, elk, turkey, and bear can't be hunted from a boat. But again, it's the perfect opportunity to fish and hunt squirrels.
What species can be hunted from a boat?
It's your small game species and your fur bears.
So hunting squirrels from a boat, what else you need to know? I mean, even if you're hunting, your boat has to be legal. You have to make sure you've got the throwable device, your fire extinguisher, everything. You got to make sure your boat is legal, right?
Sure, all your proper safety equipment. And the next thing is you have to make sure that they have permission to hunt on that property and retrieve that animal.
Okay, that's something that you really need to remember. So Army Corps of Engineer properties in and around lakes and rivers and streams where there's no houses behind you, perfect opportunities for this, right?
It is the perfect opportunity if it's open to hunting.
And wildlife management areas as well.
You're exactly right, Chad. For example, Green River WMA is a perfect opportunity.
So you can come out here, do a little fishing, keep a kid active, and it's a really fun, safe way. But you got to make sure we're only talking about small game and fur bearers. No hunting of any type of big game, turkeys, deer, elk, none of that can be done from a boat.
You're exactly right, and we have to make sure when we talk about fur bears that you are not allowed to harvest raccoons or possums from a boat casting the rays of a light.
The other thing is some people do use boats for waterfowl hunting. Now that gets a little bit more dicey because that boat cannot be under power.
What we're trying to avoid are people using the boat to motor ducks up and shoot them while they're on the move.
Okay, so they're allowed to use the boat to get to their spot and hunt from the boat, but they can't be under power while shooting.
That's exactly right, Chad.
If you've never tried hunting from a boat, it's a lot of fun and it can be done very safe. You just got to make sure that you prepare, have your permission lined out, and make sure your boat is safe. Now let's check in and see who else has been out having fun in this week's Ones That Didn't Get Away. Hunter Riley took his very first deer, a nice buck in Carter County. Congratulations. Check out how wide this deer is that Hannah McCutcheon took with a bow and arrow in Lyon County. Here we have Austin King with a nice doe taken during the youth hunt on the Ohio County Family Farm. Nice job. Anthony Kopp of Northern Kentucky caught this nice rainbow trout while fishing with his grandfather. Fish was released alive. Chloe Jones took her very first deer while hunting with her mom and her dad in Clay County. Nice job. Here we have Elena Duke, her very first ever, a really impressive buck. Congratulations. Fall is a great time of year to experience the outdoors here in the Commonwealth. Make sure you get those kids outdoors. And may I suggest the Salado Wildlife Education Center. And remember, hunting and fishing on private property is a privilege. Always ask permission and thank the landowner. Until next week, I'm your host, Chad Miles, and I hope to see you in the woods or on the water.